Saturday night was a tough one, a gut punch for BYU fans. There is no doubt about that. The good news is BYU has every opportunity to right the ship this week against Arizona State. What is it going to take for BYU to do just that? Good thing you asked, as we're talking about it on a Film Review Monday.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. As always, thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com today and you'll get started with a $5 bet that can net you $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. That's all you got to do is go to FanDuel.com to get started today. All right, let's dive right in on today's show. As I mentioned, it's a Film Review Monday, and BYU sits at 9-1 on the season. A lot of raw emotions, obviously, after BYU sees their perfect start snapped in a tough loss to the Kansas Jayhawks on Saturday night. Now, you can go back and listen to my initial reaction on our postcast edition of the show if you did not catch that right away. I had a chance to go back and rewatch this game in its entirety. And my overall takeaway after rewatching this game is that BYU, for the first time seemingly all season long, did not play what they have been calling complementary football. Two sides of the ball felt like they were playing complementary football. Those would be the special teams and the defense. You look at the statistics, they're undeniable. I'll just, Gregor Bell threw this out, and I'll quote him on this. How good was BYU's defense in this game? Well, they allowed Kansas to a season-low 242 yards. The previous low was 319 yards. A season-low 73 rushing yards. A previous low was more than double that at 151. A season-low tying 17 points scored. A season-low 13 first downs. The previous low in that department was 17. A season-low 52 plays overall. See, the previous low was 54. And then a season-low of 33% third down conversion percentage. Previous low was 42%. BYU's defense was outstanding on Saturday night, and rewatching the game ingrained that in my head. It was absolutely a joy to watch BYU's defense do what they did against Kansas. Outside of that opening drive that Kansas went 84 yards and scored that opening touchdown, BYU just absolutely locked the lid on Kansas and did not allow them to do anything really of significance. The other touchdown they scored came on that fluke play, the quick kick that went off the helmet of Evan Johnson, and it gets recovered on the 3-yard line. They punch it in for a touchdown, and that ends up being the game-winning touchdown. Crazy things happen in the game of football, but BYU's defense did more than its fair share to help BYU in hopes of getting a victory in this game. Special teams-wise, nothing. There's nothing in the special teams that screamed to me that BYU failed in that department. Yes, they have had games where they've gotten touchdowns out of special teams, but those are essentially like a cherry on top of anything else. There was nothing in the special teams that hurt BYU. So where does the blame go in this loss for BYU? Well, there's a third phase of the game, and it's the offense that cost BYU in this one. Rewatching the game, yes, there are play calling issues. There's execution lacking. Jake Retzlaff's quarterback play at times left a lot to be desired. But the biggest thing to me is there was a statement made by Chase Roberts in the postgame press conference that he said all week long in practice, BYU had struggles scoring, especially when it came to red zone practice type stuff. And when you say that, that tells me everything I need to know, it feels like, about this game, because BYU got in what I like to call the scoring zone. What is that? It's 30 yards and in. Traditionally, the red zone is 20 yards and in. BYU had 5 trips to what I term the scoring zone. That's the 30-yard line and in. 4 of those inside the 20, so inside the red zone. 2 of them inside the 10-yard line. And how many points out of those 5 trips does BYU get? Of a possible 35, just 13. That is abysmal. That is unacceptable. And it is absolutely something BYU must rectify when they go into this matchup against Arizona State on Saturday night. You cannot and you will not win many games scoring just 13 points, especially when you get into scoring territory as often as they did and come up empty or come away with just 3 points. It's got to be better. And for Chase Roberts to lift the lid on that in the postgame press conference, very revealing to hear him say that we had issues scoring in practice, because I am a firm believer that you play the way that you practice. And Is BYU's defense taking it too hard on BYU's offense? It shouldn't be that way, but here's the thing. BYU's offense, have they bought into their own hype? Did they eat the rat poison, as Nick Saban liked to talk about? Did they read their own press clippings and feel like, you know what, we got this thing on lockdown? They got a major slice of humble pie, and that goes across the board from Aaron Roderick to the other assistant coaches to Jake Retzlaff to BYU's offensive line, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. Everybody involved with the BYU offense has to take a look in the mirror and go back to the drawing board and understand that they aren't, quote, all that. They've got to get back to doing what they were doing to have success early this season. There have been games that BYU has put up 30 points this season and made it look relatively easy. There's been other games like this most recent one where they have made it look like a slog on offense. There's no ready-made answer for me. I know, trust me, my social media feeds and the comments, all y'all want Aaron Roderick fired. Great. You can want that all you want at this juncture, but let's also remind you, BYU's 9-1, and I'm not sure that I've ever seen a football program anywhere fire their offensive coordinator after a 9-1 start. I know that's going to come off as me being an apologist for Aaron Roderick. So be it. I'll say unpopular things. That's part of this job as I prognosticate and also analyze BYU football. They have a great opportunity going to Arizona State this week. It's going to be a tough game. Cam Scattaboo and the rest of the Arizona State Sun Devils, they are licking their chops thinking, all right, we got a wounded animal, speaking of the BYU Cougars, coming to our hometown down there in Tempe, and we're going to upset them. We're going to punch our ticket to the Big 12 title game on the backs of that win. What does BYU have to do? They have got to buoy themselves up. They have to find answers, and they have to get back to work this week. Stop it with all of the interactions out there when it comes to the national media, because I don't think those are going to come this week. When you drop your first game of the year, suddenly nobody wants to talk to y'all. And that should help BYU refocus and hopefully re-energize themselves, particularly on offense as they get ready for Arizona State. What else did I take away from BYU in that loss? Well, there's some good in there because, as there always is, there's not a game where you can't find a single positive out there. But the simple fact of the matter is, for the first time, I feel like all season long, BYU's offense did not uphold their mantra of playing complementary football. You had two of the three phases doing their part in playing complementary football, and the offense, it did not do its job. That needs to change, because if it doesn't change, BYU can find themselves quickly on the heels of a 2-loss slide and suddenly find themselves relying on tiebreakers and having to rely on other teams out there to get them to Arlington. So, bad news, offense was not good against Kansas. Zero doubt about that. There's blame to be shared across the board. Jake Retzlaff missed opportunities with his throws. Aaron Roderick, some curious play calls. I also thought there was execution issues offensive line-wise. The false start from Connor Pay late in this game, is he's still checking the alignment when that snap is called for by Jake Retzlaff. It's inexcusable. It went from 4th and 6 to 4th and 11 and all but sealed BYU's fate. Those are critical errors, and it really did in BYU's hopes of another late comeback win. And the pressure should be off them now. So now that, like I said, they've got to refocus and get back to work and hopefully have a much better week of practice offensively and hopefully start scoring a little bit when it comes to their practice opportunities, because once again, I think that translates directly over to when you take the field in real live game action. All right. More takeaways, guys that stood out to me, positives, otherwise. We'll get to more of that momentarily as we roll on right here on Locked On Cougars. Proud to be part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Now, 5 Hour Energy knows that being a passionate football fan is not just a hobby. It's really just a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through those all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, and that maybe the agonizing overtime that seems to be extending your fandom. That's why they've created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot, which is a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot that's made for super fans like you. The fans who are first in the parking lot, who are the last to leave, we see you, and 5 Hour Energy wants to reward you guys. The best part about it is what gives you a fan fuel is it gives you the opportunity to stay up to speed and stay energized the entire time to root on the Cougars, in this case, when they take on Arizona State this week, and hopefully bounce back in a big way. So take advantage today. Being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. You can take advantage of that by getting some Stan the Fan limited edition 5 Hour Energy shot from our friends at 5 Hour Energy. What is your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy and go order it today at 5hourenergy.com. It's also shipped nationwide. It doesn't matter where you're at. You can take advantage of this today. It's available at 5hourenergy.com. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. All right, so other things I took away from BYU's loss to Kansas. There were 4 guys to me that stood out on film that I think have opportunities to be future players for BYU, if not contributors the rest of the way this season. Number 1, Isaiah Jatta. That guy filled in at right tackle and was solid, if not spectacular, in his first start of the season for the BYU football program. When he was brought to BYU, there was some out there thinking he was going to start right away. But I was told by multiple people in the program, the whole plan this year was to redshirt him, get him up to speed, and unleash him on the Big 12 next year, while also getting him an opportunity at some point this year to play in those 4 games you can as a redshirt and get experience. Well, he's still very much within that window. He will redshirt still officially this year. But I'm telling you, looking at Isaiah Jatta right now, you can pretty much put him down as a starting tackle at either left or right tackle next year for BYU. I thought he was very, very good for the BYU football program. Raider Damuni, an absolute revelation in this game. This is a kid who's a former 4-star athlete. He's been beset by injuries early on in his BYU career since coming home off of a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And Crew Wakely was lost in this game due to injury. Raider Damuni more than stepped up. I was really, really impressed with him at that strong safety spot. Also liked what I saw from guys like Ethan Slade as well. They have not seen a ton of action, speaking of him and Raider, Slade and Raider Damuni, but it's good to see Raider really step up in a big moment and contribute. And I think that he is going to, for however long Crew Wakely might miss out for, I would pencil in Raider Damuni as that complimentary player alongside Tanner Wall in that backfield. Miles Hall, really impressed with him. We had guys like Sione Moa, Siale Asera who were unavailable in this game. Well, that allowed a guy like Miles Hall to play more as a reserve at linebacker for BYU, and he showed some really nice flashes. Now, it took me a little while in that game to understand who was wearing the number 46 because he's listed on the roster wearing number 30. And I kept watching this guy chasing down players, making plays, wearing the number 46. There's no 46 on the BYU game day roster that they gave us in the press box. Well, I turned around and asked BYU Sports Information Department. Oh, that's Miles Hall. Really good to see him do his thing. And then the final guy I wanted to shout out has been a mainstay for BYU, but Marque Collins. If you go back and watch that first drive for Kansas, they saw something on tape that said, hey, we're going after number 2 on BYU's defense. And they went after Marque Collins, and they victimized him time and time and time again on that first drive as they went right down the field and scored a touchdown. The good news is Marque Collins did not crumble in that moment. He only got better and better as the game went along, and an interception late in the game, that was one of those things like the ball don't lie moments. He stuck with it. He believed in himself, and he didn't get down on himself and stuck with the game plan, and he came up with a big interception. Yes, I know BYU's offense didn't do much with it after that, but still, that was a big play and showed the mental resilience, just the overall resilience you want to see from a player of his caliber. It was good to see that from Marque Collins. Other things that I really didn't like or liked about BYU. The final 4 plays, obviously BYU gets down the field, has a chance to score, to go up and hopefully win this game. And there's been a lot of belly aching on social media, but the play calling on the final 4 plays in particular. 3 of them were runs. I get all that. Now, the first 2 runs, I completely understand for BYU in that circumstance. Kansas has 2 timeouts. You want to make them use those timeouts to hopefully hold on to some time for themselves should you score in that moment. The play of all of them in that 4-play sequence that will stick with me as to why it happened is why Jake Retzlaff on the 3rd down goes kill, 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 which is an indication that they are changing the play at the line. He audibles and runs the speed option to the boundary side. What did he see? That is a question that needs to be answered, whether it's from Aaron Roderick, Kalani Sitake, or Jake Retzlaff, or hopefully all 3, we can get an answer on that. Because that play, I think, all but sealed BYU's fate. It went nowhere. Running to the boundary side obviously has less field to work with, and Kansas, They absolutely ready for it. They had a guy assigned to the quarterback. They had a guy assigned to the pitch man, and they bottled it up. The fourth down situation, Connor paid that false start. That is just a critical, can't have it error in that moment. It's one of those things that sealed more so BYU's fate, similar to that option to the boundary side. I rewatched that play, and Connor was still doing his checks when the snap was called. All four other offensive linemen, essentially the rest of the offense was ready to go. Connor wasn't in that moment. And that's a gut punch, because I know Connor, when he joins us this week on the podcast, is probably going to bring that up he might have to ask him about it, and he'll be sure to take responsibility for it. It's a critical error. And when you go 4th and 6 to 4th and 11 with the game on the line, yeah, that's really tough sledding, because already tough sledding with 4th and 6. 4th and 11, whew, I don't fancy your odds. And the problem was, if you watch that play, the final play where they threw it short of the sticks, Caleb Etienne got a little bit off balance, and the defensive end was able to get inside of him and put pressure on Jake Retzlaff, which forced him to make an early throw. Had he had maybe a touch longer, you may have seen one of those players break free, but he had to get rid of the football, and Chase Roberts comes up a couple yards short, and that's all she wrote. The other thing I wanted to point out is BYU in that third quarter took more than 10 minutes off of the clock with one drive. They get down there. Remember, they called timeout when they had issues getting the personnel package in there. And it irks me that they're still having issues getting play calls and personnel on the field in a timely fashion. That just still grinds my gears, because at this point in the season, you should have that humming pretty good. I don't know if BYU needs to assign another coach or coaches to deal with that, but it's not good enough in that regard. But they come out of the timeout and decide to kick for the field goal to take the lead 13-10. You had 4th and 3, and the analytics on ESPN on the broadcast, and I know that Kalani Sitake, his analytics book, probably said, go for it here. Why didn't they go for it? That's another question I need to have answered, because I know that the conventional wisdom is take the points, take the lead, but this is a BYU team that has been so good on 4th down. And for the first time, it feels like in many, many games, BYU shied away from being aggressive and went conservative there. It might have cost BYU, because had they gotten that first down, could they grind out the entire quarter with just one drive? They sure would have ground at least 2 more minutes off with another set of downs, but it's just one of those kind of coulda, woulda, shoulda moments for BYU. So amidst all of it, yes, there are questions that remain and will linger, and we'll obviously get answers, hopefully. I can hope, but answers may be lacking in terms of what I'm hoping to hear from guys like Kalani Sitake, Aaron Roderick, or Jake Retzlaff. But the good news is there is good in this. BYU's defense, absolutely dynamite. If they can put that type of performance on the field against Arizona State, they're going to give BYU a fighting chance of beating the Sun Devils. Cam Skattebo, he is as good, if not as good, as Devin Neal. But if BYU can bottle up the vaunted Jayhawks rushing attack, once again, 73 yards given up. Their previous season low was 151. If you can put that same type of performance on the field against Arizona State, you're going to give BYU every opportunity to go to Arizona State and win that game. We'll have more on that as the week progresses, but there is good amidst all the other carnage out there, even though BYU lost. And the other thing about it is, have faith. I'm just going to say that. This is a BYU team that when their back's been against the wall multiple times this season, they have come out swinging, and they have proven themselves to be a resilient bunch. This is the first time they've dealt with a loss on the season. How will they respond? I am hoping it's an emphatic, we're going to go get back into this. The other thing about it is, I know that BYU's players, they're a can-do bunch. They're not a team that gets down on themselves this season. Remember, this is a team that has found itself down in games multiple times this season, and for the first time seemingly ever, well, quite literally the first time ever, they didn't come out in the end with the victory. That's going to have them supremely motivated to get it right this week against Arizona State. And I think Cougar fans, all y'all out there listening or watching this, I think you'd be right back on the bandwagon if BYU goes out there and gets to 10-1. I think that would be a really, really marvelous result, but they've got to put the work in this week. And I think some of the attention will be steered away from BYU after that first loss. And I'm hoping that the players will understand, yeah, there's been a lot of things good and bad written and said about y'all. Ignore all of it. Get back to work. Nobody cares outside of the fact that you go out there and win on Saturday night against Saturday afternoon, I should say, against Arizona State. You dropped the ball against Kansas. Now, can you get back in the saddle, and can you bounce back against ASU? And it's a question that will ultimately be answered in short order. All right, coming up next, we're going to flip over to basketball just for a moment. In case you missed it over the weekend, BYU Basketball moved to 4-0 on the season. How did it go? What did it take away from the Idaho win for BYU Basketball as they now enjoy a 1-week break ahead of the next game? Well, there's one thing. There's a major injury that needs to be monitored, and we'll get to that as we roll on right here on Locked On Cougars. Proud to be part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, FanDuel is here for you guys when it comes to your sports betting needs. Get ready to tackle all the NFL action this season with FanDuel as they are America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. It's as simple as that. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything to place your live bets on the NFL all in one place. And more importantly, when you get the hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you're placing your bets. It's as simple as that. It's a really, really simple way to go about your sports betting needs. So visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started once again with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. It's as simple as that. That's FanDuel.com. Once again, never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with our friends at FanDuel as they are an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Now, Game Time is here for you guys to get you out to the events, sporting events in particular, but anything else you're interested in, they can get you the tickets to it. The best part is their Game Time Picks feature makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams or other events as simple as possible. Filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you do not have to search through thousands of other tickets to find the right options for you guys. You also can, inside the app, take advantage of all their different offers. They have a lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, and even job loss protection. You lose your job, they're going to take care of you. That's the guarantee that our friends at Game Time bring to the table when it comes to your ticketing needs. I also really love the fact that you can see a panoramic view of the seats you'll have in whatever venue you happen to be going to, and you can know exactly what you're going to experience before you get there and enjoy it. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets and do it with our friends at Game Time Picks. First off, download the Game Time app, then create an account, and then use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege and save $20 off your first purchase. Once again, terms apply. Create that account, redeem the promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. Hope you all are doing well out there. Another reminder for you guys, if you have not done so already, join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. It's a great way to get the inside scoop on all things BYU that I am hearing about, and also have one-on-one conversations with myself. If that's something you would like to do, join us today. It's the links in the show notes below, whether you're watching and or listening to this. All you got to do is click that hyperlink. Join us today. You get a 14-day free trial to be inside and get the inside scoop on all things BYU sports with the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right, before we go on today's show, the BYU basketball program was in action over the weekend, and I can understand that some of you may have missed it because obviously the attention's still very much focused on BYU football right now. And I fully understand that because it's still football season. But I don't think we can ignore the fact that BYU basketball is doing some really, really good things. And the thing about it is they're doing it while still having plenty to work on in their own right. Well, Saturday, BYU found themselves in a first-half dogfight against the Idaho Vandals. They came in, speaking of Idaho, fully intent on making life difficult for BYU, and they shot an otherworldly percentage from three in that first half. It was a really, really tight game, 3-point game at halftime, and it kind of showed me in this game in the end that sometimes the OGs still have all the answers. Any of you who have played pickup or church ball know that there seems to be one of those guys who seems to be 15 or 20 years older than everybody else, doesn't seem to have the same athleticism as anybody on the court that they're playing alongside, but man, can they ball. They have a set shot. They have an ability around the basketball. They get an incredible touch. Whatever it is, they can hang with the guys they're playing with because they have an incredible ability. I know that guys like Egor, Demin, Cannon Catchings, Mihailo Bošković, they've all taken headlines early this season. But who was it that stepped up in a big moment and led BYU to this victory over Idaho? Oh, yeah, two of the OGs, Richie Saunders and Foussenyi Traore. Really, really good to see those two go out there and do their thing. Foos was really, really impressive around the basket. His touch, it's really, really nice to see that. Will it translate when BYU gets into Big 12 play? TBD. But for this game, incredible to see him go out there and tack on 29 points off of the bench, 9 rebounds as well. Also had 2 assists. Really good to see that. He was perfect. I think he went 8 of 8 from the field. It might have been 9 of 9 until he missed his first shot. Ends up going 11 of 12 overall from the field. And when you score 29 points in 23 minutes off the bench, that is about as efficient as it comes. And congratulations to Big Foose in that circumstance. Richie Saunders, really, really effective in his own right. 26 points, 10 of 15 shooting, 4 of 8 from 3. He was absolutely awesome. And I said it earlier this season that it's really good to see Richie looking for his spots offensively. This is a guy, remember, Richie's kind of been that glue guy, a sixth man. I know that John Rothstein had him as all glue guy team the last 2 years running. Well, Richie decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a leading role. I'm going to kind of emerge from the shadows. And yeah, that glue guy stuff, it still is there for Richie. But him putting up 26 points, really, really good to see that, because that shows that he has got an offensive prowess and ability that BYU needs in this circumstance. And I'm not going to say that guys like Egor, Demin, Kenan Catching, Bošković, any of these newcomers didn't have their moments in this game, because they did. Egor still had 16 points, 7 assists, and 2 rebounds, as well as 3 steals. Very, very solid stat line. Kenan Catching's 8 points of his own. They all contributed in a big way as BYU pulled away in the second half for a 95-71 win. That's a very strong win for BYU, considering the circumstance they found themselves in at the end of the first half. The crazy thing about this is that Idaho still shot an incredible percentage from 3. They were 12 of 21 in this game. UC Riverside and Idaho have shot really, really well against BYU. And the good news is BYU's defense is not operating at peak efficiency right now. The peel and switch that Will Voigt has installed in BYU, it's a really, really good defense when everybody's on the same page. But right now, there are lulls for BYU in terms of being on the same page defensively, and it's cost them in some of these games. Hasn't cost them in the biggest way, obviously, with a loss quite yet, but BYU has to keep working on it. And I've got hopes that, given adequate time, obviously, leading up to what should be a really, really stiff test against Ole Miss next week on Thanksgiving down there in San Diego, the BYU will be ready for it, because that's going to be their first, I think, real true test of the season, because Ole Miss looks the part out of the SEC. But I also look at this as BYU is showing and flexing some muscle. That's good to see. There's multiple contributions coming from all over the court. Now, the downer note of this game was the fact that Keba Keita was helped off of the court after suffering a lower leg injury. I'm not 100% certain if it was ankle or foot related, but he was helped off the court. And in talking with some BYU people at the BYU football game later that night, the early reports were that BYU still evaluating things, but he was going to miss some time. There's just zero doubt about the fact that he's going to sit out for a little bit. And that's disappointing, because Keba, I think BYU needs him if they want to have the success they hope to have this season, especially when it comes to the Big 12. He is an incredible athlete. He plays much bigger than his listed 6'9" just due to his athleticism. And losing him for any significant degree of time into the Big 12 slate, that'd be a really, really tough thing for BYU to absorb, because the biggest thing I was concerned about coming into the season in terms of the depth for this squad, I wasn't worried about the guard line. Wasn't really worried about the wing. I was worried about the front court. When it's Keba Keita, Foussenyi, Traore, that's kind of your 2 guys that are your main 2 big men. You need to have some other options emerge. And maybe Mihailo Bošković can show some more interior presence than he has showed already, but he's a 6'11", more wing type player, a stretch 4. You're going to need him to step up and help out in that circumstance, because losing Keba Keita, it cannot be overstated how much of a blow that is for BYU. I'm hopeful that they will find a way to work around it, because you have to. You simply got it. I think that moves Foussenyi, Traore, obviously, into the starting lineup here. And like I said, you have to have a guy like Mihailo Bošković step up. You look at Max Triplett now, the walk-on big man from Snow College. He's 6'9", 210 pounds. He can offer at least some interior presence. But my overall takeaway is hurry back, Keba. BYU needs you on the court, and any significant lost time is going to hurt BYU. And it's not a good time for him to lose him, obviously, because you're going to go into, I think, 2 really, really tough games down there in San Diego against currently 25th ranked Ole Miss. And then we'll see what the other side of that bracket ends up with. And then, oh, by the way, following that, you go to Providence in that Big 12 Big East challenge. So, yeah, you have one game this week against Mississippi Valley State that you will absolutely steamroll, because the Delta Devils, no offense to them, they're just not the opposition that is going to threaten BYU. But the 3 games beyond that, you got to be ready for it. And if Keba Keita is back on the court as soon as BYU takes on Ole Miss on Thanksgiving, it's afternoon, so it's 3:30 p.m. Mountain Time on FS1. That would be a major win to get him back as quick as that. But watching how that injury ultimately unfolded, I've got my concerns that he may miss longer than that. And I would currently say that the target date for his return, in my mind, is December 31st against Arizona State when you kick off Big 12 play. He's got a month and change to get healthy at that point if it is a significant degree of an injury. But hopefully he's back before that. But that's what I'm currently anticipating. You're probably going to miss the rest of the non-conference slate. But the hope is that come December 31st, when you tip it off against Arizona State in Big 12 play, you have him back on the court, and hopefully that's enough time for him to get back in action for the BYU Cougars. All right, so there you go. That is everything I got for you guys on this Film Review Monday for BYU Sports, and we will be back tomorrow. Still TBD on when I talk to Connor Pay this week, so we'll have more for you guys as I get information on that. But also, coming up this week, we're going to catch up with Richie Bradshaw from Locked On Sun Devils, do a little crossover podcast, talk about a major game in the Big 12. Might be the biggest game to date in the Big 12 because, frankly, it's an eliminator game. One of these teams wins is going to be on track to play in the Big 12 title game and have their college football playoff hopes alive. The other, well, you're probably looking at maybe the Alamo Bowl. That's kind of where things stand right now as these two teams go into a major clash on Saturday afternoon. But looking forward to it. We'll have more for you guys as the week progresses here. So once again, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen, of the day. And as always, thank you for being everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.